Hello friends, today we will discuss a new topic, colonial discourse. When we talk about it, we will consider the meaning of discourse and colonial discourse, then characteristics of colonial discourse, different perspectives of colonial discourse regarding India, namely colonial, missionaries and administrative. Now, let us begin with the term discourse. Discourse is a literary term which means systematic view about something which we narrate or talk or write about. You must have heard the name of Michel Foucault. He in sociology is considered as a father of discourse. He says that in sociology, discourse is defined as any possible form by which individuals understand and explain and express reality with meaning. This is very much important that we not only discuss reality, but we give and we understand it with some definite meaning which is latent, which may not be seen, but which is there, and we have to understand that meaning with that to understand the reality. When we look into our daily activities, here one more interesting thing. When we discuss our daily activities, we see that generally people speak and write with the effect of or in the words of the group in power and uses the language, the style, vocabulary, gestures, how the person in power speak or write or say or communicate. This means that discourse involves the perspective of those who are in power, whether it is political power or economic power or any other power. That you should always keep this in mind. Now, we come to the term colonial discourse. This term was coined by Edward Said, who introduced the idea that colonialism operates not only as a form of military rule, but also simultaneously as a discourse of domination. What Foucault has said is said by Said in different words, but inner meaning of both the explanations is the same. Leverhulme says that colonial discourse is generally defined as discourse or communication that revolves around the phenomenon of colonialism. Some experts define it as a specific sort of a statement or set of communication that is based on colonial relationship between colonial or imperial power and those included in the communities that it colonizes. The same thing has been said by Leverhulme in different manner, that it is indicative of the relationship between who rules and to whom he rules. Now, when we come to the characteristics of colonial discourse, we may say that it is the collection of narratives, statements and opinions that deal with colonialized people told from the perspective of colonizers. These may be in the form of narration or storytelling, description, exposition and or argument. That means what they write, how they describe, how they exhibit and how they argue about their perspective. All these are followed by a definite perspective which is made by those who are ruling, and their perspective is known as colonial perspective. When we look the colonial perspective in Indian context, we have to go in history to relate the things and see how this perspective has been developed. You must have learned history of India and of Europe or world history, and you must be knowing that almost 4 centuries ago, Europeans came to India mainly for trading purposes, especially when they found a new sea route to reach to southeast and eastern countries of Asia. Gradually, they start political interference and invading states to secure their commercial and political interest. Here we can remember 2 names. You must have learned the name of Columbus, who started to find a new route to India, but he reached to America and he found a new land. And another is Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese who came to southern part of India to Kerala, and by whom the Portuguese entered in Kerala. And all these came India or in other eastern or southeast countries of Asia for trading purposes, because now let's go to history. After industrial revolution, they were producing, manufacturing many things, and they demanded a new market where they can sell these products, and this inspired them to find new areas where they can trade, and they went to Africa and Asia and other continents of the world. And one more thing, have you remembered that in the time of Jahangir, in Surat, some Christian or British came who wanted to establish factories there and start trading with India. After that, we see that they were more interested in protecting their financial and economic interests, and for that they start interfering in political life of that states where they were establishing their companies and offices for trade. When we see the 18th and 19th century history, we find that many European and British scholars came to India with them, but their purpose was to study Indian society and culture with the help of Hindu Dharmashastras. They were those scholars who were mainly Orientalists who wanted to know more and more about India and other Asian countries. They learned Sanskrit in India, they learned Japanese and Chinese in Japan and China, and started studying and reviewing the old ancient literature in that languages. And their work start providing and start developing a perspective for foreigners to understand India. When we see the colonial perspective in Indian context, We can say that British started introducing new technologies such as post and telegraph, railways, industries and modern education. Their primary aim was to reach easily to the farthest areas, to understand their culture and to open new avenues for the development of trade and commerce. These started and introduced new technology for their own purpose, for their own benefit. But these post and telegraph, railway, industries, all that directly and indirectly helped India to grow and to learn many things from Europe. And this not only developed India in economic terms, but we see that many new cities and new occupation grew because of these new developed technologies. They not only introduced new technologies, but also a new form of education which paved the way of knowing more new and giving a new perspective, new thinking to the Indian population. British colonialism also led to new values such as equality, rationality, democracy and freedom, along with scientific temperament, which attracted new emerging educated strata of society. Must be knowing that Bengal was one of the early states where education grew, and many middle class Indians and upper class Indians started learning English and started reading the literature of that period and imbibed new values and started thinking in terms of those values. Along with Bengal, we also say that Tamil Nadu and Kerala and mostly southern states, they were the earlier part of India which started learning from Britishers and British education or European education system. Bernard Cohen argues that colonialists found that compared to other colonial countries, India had a rich heritage of economic and political legal system, vis-a-vis cultural religious systems grew gradually during the rule of different dynasties. This is also important because the culture and social system of Middle America or Africa were not developed. They were primarily tribal societies or primitive societies with their folk culture. But India was much richer country in terms of culture and social systems. We can see that if we don't go far behind in history, but the period of Maurya, period of Gupta Vansh, then came Khilji and Das and Suri and Mughals, they all have the system of a systematic political functioning and controlling the total population in a systematic manner. We all know about Chanakya, who wrote Arthashastra and described how a ruler should be, and it is very famous. Literature, political system, economic system, all these were very much high level quality wise systems which were here. With them was a cultural religious system of Hindus as well as of Muslims, and they have rich traditions of architecture, of making buildings, making roads, writing scriptures. We know Sher Shah Suri, who constructed Grand Trunk Road from north to east, covering over all India. That all indicates that how our system was developed and advanced. So the British have to adjust themselves and understand that culture to control these societies and to establish their own system. Further, we can say that colonial powers were interested in developing a political military system in India. They want to rule, but not in that manner. We see the dynasties earlier, those who are ruling, they want to control the system, but they didn't want to control the whole of population and in all manners. Then what did they do? They appointed residents in the princely estates to control them. This is a small example of how they were controlling indirectly the princely estates and other areas. That is the colonial perspective. Then we can include missionary perspective in this. Regarding missionary perspective, interestingly, Christians started coming to India. They came in Kerala and established, but they confined to that area only. But in 15th and 16th centuries, they entered with the Portuguese and British and gradually expanded their area of work. They went to farthest areas and to propagate, started establishing church and propagate their religion. Earlier missionaries were critical of Hinduism. Their main interest was to spread and popularize Christianity in India, and they worked for that. They attempted to weaken Indian society and culture by condemning its base by citing examples from translated Sanskrit texts like tradition of sati, parda, cow worship, idol worship and the caste system. They wanted to prove that India is not a such country that can come to the mark of modernity because of their religion, and they started criticizing Indian culture, whether of Hindus or Muslims. They suggested that Christianity is an alternative, especially to those who were at the lower level of the caste hierarchy and felt exploited in the system. But many Hindus, even after conversion, continue to follow their caste rules and practices. They try to prove that caste system is dysfunctional and it is harmful for the society because it distinguishes between higher and lower caste. They did not saw the functional interdependence of caste but proved that it is a conflict and power related system where dominant caste are suppressing relatively lower caste. They worked with them and tried to convert them in Christianity. They converted. Many lower caste people accepted new religion, but interestingly, the old hard habits of their caste came with them in the new system, and they made a mixture of Christianity and caste regulations and caste traditions. But this is something different. When we see another aspect of this missionary perspective, we find that they were in the need of conversing with local population, and they have to learn their native languages so that they can talk with them, they can converse with them, and they wanted to translate Bible in their native languages. This led to the socio-linguistic study of Indian languages. These missionaries also helped in spread of modern education in different parts of India. They worked even in the remotest areas and among poor, weak and tribes. Northeast is the best example of their working where they work and educated them. These activities helped administrators to govern India better. Now we come to the third perspective, that is administrative perspective. Most of the British administrators were educated and trained in British universities, and they were very pragmatic. Their purpose was to understand Indian society, to exploit its resources, control it, especially the land system, and to generate regular revenue for administrative, military and commercial activities. They were very clear in their perspective and they worked for that. They felt that if they want to know India, they have to understand it very logically, and they emphasized on surveys and reports. With the expansion of their territory and activities of the East India Company, the British felt the need for more systematic and accurate information about India based on field surveys and reports. One of the earliest and most famous surveys was carried out by Dr. Francis Buchanan in 1807. Unfortunately, his extensive survey could not be published completely, but we can see how they were working. The first census of 1872 under Lord Mayo was mainly an exercise where categories of religion, caste and race were used. H.S. Risley was in charge of the census of 1901. He gave his famous classification of caste by editing 2000 odd castes with the help of census data. Field studies also led to different views about origin of castes. For example, Nesfield, he discussed about occupation, origin of caste and others. They also emphasized on villages and cities. Administrative idea of India along with caste was based on village. Charles Metcalfe described village communities as little republics having nearly everything they want within themselves and almost independent of any foreign relations. Village ideally was seen as a self-sufficient unit both economically and politically. Here we can use the term little community which Robert Redfield has used, and a trend was to see Indian villages as little communities. The caste and village combinedly helped the British rulers to frame revenue laws, create a class of jamindars and to force commercial agricultural practices for their own benefit. However, these studies were based on a simplicity and understanding of village life, ignoring social relations, internal politics, a pattern of wealth distribution, etc., which felt by others that it is incomplete and they work for that. In the later decades of 19th century, emerging problems of famine, riots, land alienation attracted attention for extensive studies of reality, and many people started doing it. Attempt to study urban social structure in India revealed that the nature of Indian cities were different from the cities with highly industrialized economies and societies. Indian cities were classified based on the major functions performed by them, that is economic, military, political and religious. It is also important to note that while all four functions were mostly found together, cities differ in their dominating function. For example, those cities which were capitals of a certain state were basically political cities, whereas cities like Haridwar or Kashi or Varanasi or Allahabad were religious cities, and this classification gave an idea of what is the major function of a particular city. In short, we can say that the studies done by colonial rulers, whether they were missionaries or scholars or other intellectuals, were on various aspects of Indian society and social institutions. The census and survey reports and imperial gazettes helped later to social anthropologists and sociologists to study Indian society more deeply and led to further research in many fields. Reason is obvious. When particularly after independence, though also before independence, there were a tradition of those literary persons who started seeing India from their own perspective or for Indological perspective. And after independence, the new generation of scholars started viewing India from their own Indian perspective and started criticizing this colonial perspective, and now we see many examples of this new tradition which is re-studying India in terms of its value of its own culture and values and traditions.